everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
18-year-old Amir Balat threw an improvised explosive device into the crowd. You can then see him grab what may be a second device from 19-year-old Ibrahim Kayumi. Police chased him down the street, tackled Balat, and handcuffed him.
I think Americans are naive about Muslims. They tend to deal with the Muslim situation as if it's just one more minority and everyone's the same and you can't see anything bad. You know, can't say anything bad about Islam because that's prejudiced.
And you might be put on a murder list.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
but
that's not great.
I actually wrote a piece about the fact that I was not exactly thrilled by Mamdani's election, and it wasn't purely to do with his impractical policies, but I didn't like the fact that he was Muslim. Not supposed to say that. I was interested in the fact that his religion didn't play a part appreciably in the election. Nobody wanted to say, but this is the city of 9/11. What does this mean symbolically? I can tell you what it means symbolically to the Muslim community outside the United States.
Conquest?
Conquest, that was exactly the word I used. By the way, this piece was not published. It was spiked.
You know,
because you can't say that. But
but they say it. Imams and clerics in the United States say this explicitly and put the videos on the internet.
Oh, this is a typical example of when you have to take people at their word when they tell you what they want to do.
That they have the jihad of the womb. They say that too.
Yes. And this is a predatory and conquering religion. It believes that everyone is secretly born a Muslim and they just have to figure it out. And they're going to help you. And it is a religion that does not believe in the separation of church and state. It's obviously oppressive to women. It's wildly hostile to homosexuality. It is utterly illiberal. And it is antithetical to our way of doing things in the United States. Now, we've been fortunate so far. We've had a very small number of Muslims, and that's been the key. They've tended to be well-off.
Doctors and engineers and
a lot of them
Dearborn.
in the professional class. They don't live in ghettos, and
except in Minneapolis,
they tend to be quite moderate. You know, maybe Muslim in name only. They're not fanatics. They're not very good Muslims, but they are good Americans. Mm-hmm. And so I think it has made us think, well, there's nothing wrong with a lot of Muslims coming in, and I'd say there's definitely nothing wrong with a few Muslims coming in, but it's very concerning if you have a large number, because then, as has happened all over Europe, they do ghettoize and they do not assimilate.
I broadly agree with that. I was in New York City for 9/11. And then, in the 20 plus years since, I personally sort of lost a concern for Islam as an issue. It just sort of faded away in my set of things I think about and worry about at the global scale. And it came roaring back for me because of two things. One was the global reaction in the West to 10/7. I'm not Jewish. I have a lot of Jewish friends, though. I'm very sympathetic to the Israelis' circumstances. But even regardless of the Israel-Palestine politics, the reaction in our college campuses before there was any response was so monstrous and so crazy, and just seemed like, oh, I guess there's been some horrible fifth column takeover by crypto-Islamists that have planted the seeds of fifth columns in across our society. Like that's what it looked like to me. And then I had like a subsequent experience with somebody who I'd known for a long time who'd actually been radical, like converted to Islam and then became like quite radicalized. And I had this dialogue with him that eventually ended, but it was happening in the aftermath of 10/7, and it was like, oh my gosh, it just sort of brought it to the foreground for me. And then when you look at what's happening in the UK and Europe, it's like, all right, this is a serious issue. This is serious, and it's not as serious for us in the United States, as you said, because of the level of immigration we have relative to Europe. But I mean, I have a provisional but default position of I don't see why we should have Islamic immigration into America, given what our Constitution is, and given that our current immigration law is quite explicit in saying that people with a totalitarian ideology, including but not limited to communists, are not admissible into this country. That is current immigration law on paper. It's on the books. You can look it up. So I don't understand how we let Mamdani or his father in this country. I don't know how, I don't see how we should have laws that even allow someone like him to run for office. And I know that that makes me sound like a far-right whack job, I guess, to some people. But it's like, what kind of society lets people come in and declare that they hate the society and then give them the opportunity to change it? That's crazy. He shouldn't have been allowed in. He shouldn't have been allowed to become a voting member of the public and shouldn't have been allowed to run for office. Like that's what sane politics would have. It's like, no, you're coming in here new. How about you get to have the country that you chose because you chose to come here. Nobody forced you. But that's my take right now.
I think having a law that we don't let Muslims in is probably not going to work. It's not going to fly. But I could see restricting immigration from certain countries. And just by coincidence, they're full of Muslims. I mean, and these are, by the way, a lot of the same countries that whose immigrants are net drains on social systems. So it would kill two birds with one stone.
There's a heart. So here's the pushback, and I've gotten into very serious arguments with some of my cousin who I love, who's way on the other side of these issues than I am. But I have to remind him I'm older than him, so I have to get a little wise and be like, okay, let this be personal. But he said, look, everything you're saying about the incompatibility of the faith with our governance, and the same was said about Catholics. So that's not wrong.
Well, that doesn't mean, just because they were wrong about Catholics doesn't mean that we are wrong about Islam. It doesn't follow.
Elaborate.
They're wildly different religions, and Catholics are Christians. So there's nothing incompatible. I mean, I assume this is all about the fact that you're supposed to have loyalty to the Church in Rome. But
I guess I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think that was certainly like the arguments made against, say, JFK being Catholic at the time, and dual loyalty, stuff like that.
Still, Christian doctrine is, given to Caesar. Christian doctrine believes in the separation of church and state. There is nothing explicitly incompatible between Catholicism and American democracy. Yeah. Whereas there is in Islam a requirement that your fealty is to Islam and not your nation. So that's incompatible right there. And any number of the beliefs that they espouse are contrary to American law. So I think you can build an objective case. Catholicism, fine. Islam, not fine.
It does seem like one of the ways I've thought about this, and again, I would actually love to have someone who's a very vociferous pro-Islam person on the show to push back on me hard and make the case. I want to hear it. I don't. So if you know anybody, please, you might not be the best lead generator for this
Does it
particular
sound
guest.
as if I know anybody?
But if we're going to, so long as we have this thing called a nation that has laws that have a monopoly of force over its governing area, and you can make far-flung arguments from even like an anarcho-capitalist position that should be, we should move away from that as fast as we can. Okay, I'm interested in that kind of stuff. I think it's interesting. I think it's morally fascinating, especially. The state is kind of a monster. But so long as we have a country and it has laws and we believe in some notion of the rule of law, it does seem weird to allow people in whose explicit doctrine is oppositional to that law in really profound ways.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when there's like a history of like 40 plus countries that have played this out with very similar results in every one of them. Like, it just seems like this argument's not that great. It's like, how are we supposed to, like, which evidence exactly are we trying to rely on here to make the alternate case? Like, what's the strongest case you've heard in opposition to this? Our discomfort. Like, have you ever heard an argument made that's like, wow, that's pretty solid? If like, hey, we tried to keep the Catholics out isn't good. Have you heard a good one?
Well, I mean, obviously you can say this is religious discrimination. It certainly is. But the word discrimination means more than one thing. You can be discriminating in a positive sense. And I think that we need an immigration law which is discriminating in a positive sense, that is selective, that chooses people who want to live in the country who are going to be good for the country. We should be selecting people through our own self-interest, not because they're family members, that's someone else's self-interest, but because they're going to help us, and that they have a high likelihood of blending in and becoming part of an ideally unified polity. I mean, the whole multicultural model is not going to work. There are too many different nationalities in the United States now, and we should not be aiming for having, lots of little camps like stands at the World Fair. We have to work at becoming unified again, the United States of America. I know it sounds like some kind of stump speech or something, but we have to stop emphasizing how different we are, and diversity is our strength. Diversity is not our strength. Diversity is a weakness. It is something to forge into a coherent entity. And I think we would be well off to wildly reduce immigration, which Trump has done, and I give him credit for that, and keep it that way for a while, to go through another period of letting people, move to the next generation, born in the country, lose the hyphen. I know that we in the U.S. tend to be hamstrung by our own mythology about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is, in some ways, an unfair constraint. It is as if, because we did go through waves of immigration from Europe around the turn of the last century, that we always have to do that, right?
Sure.
That we aren't really justified in turning anyone away. And that's certainly the way the progressive left now feels. That you know, whether they actually claim that they want open borders, if you follow the logic of their opinions, because they don't really believe that we have the right to deport anybody, they do believe in open borders. But I think that this American exceptionalism in relation to immigration, it makes Americans feel that they don't have a right to have immigration laws. And it also implies that Americans are not like anyone else. They don't have normal psychological, emotional, and anthropological reactions to enormous numbers of foreigners pouring into their country. We're supposed to think it's all fine, all the more the merrier. And if it starts to piss us off, we're not supposed to say anything. We're required to suppress that resentment that I mentioned,
Yeah.
because it is unjustified. We're a nation of immigrants. You're supposed to welcome everybody. And yet I believe that this gut response to a certain quantity of people who are from elsewhere, wherever they're from, is a normal human reaction. And I see it all over the world. It doesn't have to do with race. The South Africans really resent huge numbers of Zimbabweans coming in.
Yeah.
Nigeria in the 1980s expelled millions of Ghanaians who had entered their country in quantity and had become the source of enormous popular resentment. Colombia has had a popular resistance to all these Venezuelans pouring in.
Oh, yeah.
These are people who are all the same race. And this isn't about race. But it is about otherness, if you will. That's one of the less favorite words. It is about otherness. And there is such a thing. Or in-group, out-group. And I don't think it's fair to say that the United States and Americans are not allowed to have these normal responses because of our history. And after all, most countries are the result of some kind of migration. The human race started out kind of small and spread everywhere. So there are not very many countries that could claim to be made up of entirely indigenous populations, because there didn't used to be people in most places. So, when you're going to be extreme about it, we're all immigrants. We are all descended from migrants.
I mean, the notion of indigenous is so obviously like a political scam, because for a simple reason, and that is, last time I checked, England has an indigenous population, and all of the people that talk about being indigenous don't care about that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that this sort of radical left, and I'm going to say, like, and so you watch the show, I'm like softer on immigration than most of the people that are my compatriots on the right of center. But why does the left focus so narrowly just on essentially the United States and Western Europe as being like the distinct places where you can't have indigenousness unless it's brown, and that's it. It's like it's this So obviously hypocritical, very narrow, very selective, clearly purposeful way to frame things. What's going on there from your perspective?
They're always defending minorities, and it's as if it's about the other, if you will. But it's not. It's always about intra-group rivalry. And if we're talking about white people, it's in relation to other white people in the West. If they're Americans, they're especially focused on other Americans. It is an act of hostility toward their own group, but it's misunderstood as white guilt. They don't feel guilty, okay? They feel superior. And the whole move is to effectively remove themselves from their own group, from their own racial group, from their own nationality. In fact, this was commonplace when I was younger, and I'm afraid I probably participated in it. When I first was traveling in Europe, I was ashamed to be American. That was at that time very commonplace for Americans, especially of a Democratic Party perspective, would go to Europe and say really mean things about the United States and about Americans, and yet they were Americans. And I know because I did it myself when I was like in my 20s. And the play the play was to not be American, right? To not be regarded as American and not regard yourself as American because you knew how terrible they were, not we, they. And now it doesn't work. The opt-out doesn't work, right? I could deplore Americans. I was still one. I was still being perceived as one. And actually, this whole thing of trashing your own country doesn't look very good from afar. You know, it
Unless
makes
you're in
you,
France.
well, it's insecure. It's undignified. It is not hewing to reality because you can't trans yourself out of your nationality in the same way that you can't trans yourself out of your race. You just have to live with it, and and you're really obliged to use the pronoun we, not them. And this whole, I just think the progressive left is often misunderstood because that's what it's all about. It's not about real self-hatred. It is hatred of your fellow Americans. That's whom you hate.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding that that distinction there. Are you saying that it's progressives hating essentially non-progressive America, like conservatives? It's like we need to fly over America. We need to have you be replaced.
Yes.
So we're going to import your replacement, and they'll be grateful to us because aren't we so kind? And then we get to run the table on the political show because we've replaced you knuckle dragging right wingers with your red hats. Is that? I mean, I'm being
This is
hyperbolic, but
yes.
is that basically what we're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Although I think that progressives are increasingly hostile the closer that you get to them. Like they really hate classical liberals. And the people that they have punished most severely are the people who are trying to please who regard themselves as fellow progressives, but aren't just quite far left enough. But yes, it is all about, it's not self-loathing, it's loathing for most of the country.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.